Welcome to our fourth. Oh, good. Welcome to our fourth budget workshop. Roll call shows that Councilor Robinson, Councilor Wingard, Councilor Grenier, Councilor Gardner are here. I don't see anybody else. So today we are dealing with department operations and capital plan review, including council, town manager, finance, insurance, debt, and other town clerk, general assistant selections, IT and GIS. So take it away.
So Belle is in the background as she normally is, but I just want to people to be aware that she supervises several of these departments. So you might see her pop up and participate much like other department heads would. I'm going to share my screen.
Ah.
Don't you wish it went that fast? All right, I just want to change this one so I can see you all. Makes it easier. So my thought is we could kind of run through the slides I have just so that people who don't have the material that you have can have an opportunity to kind of give themselves a little bit of background. And then I will stop the screen share and we can have a discussion.
Good.
So general government is everything that kind of helps move the town along. So it's all the back office functions. It's my office. It is the town clerk's office, which is where people come in to register their cars or register to vote. We would include elections, the insurances that we pay, the debt that we pay, and some other miscellaneous expenses. And I also included facilities because we had to skip facilities. So I just want to clean that up at the end of our discussion today, if we can. So with general government, we start out with the most important, which is, of course, town council. Where would we be without town council? So for town council, we have a budget of $40,305, which is an increase of $320 or less than 1%. And included in the wages and supplies line is $1,000 for travel and training. That usually is something council likes to discuss. I put it in there as a placeholder. I don't know if you want to discuss that. It also includes all of our dues and memberships. So the major dues that we have are to Maine Municipal Association, which allows us to access their services, including the health trust, our insurances, the legal services and the trainings that we all use, and access to the member support that they have on the website, which is where we get a lot of our technical guidance. It also includes a membership to the Service Center Coalition. The town of Orono is a participant in that coalition. I happen to serve on the board of directors for the coalition, and it is an offshoot of MMA, communities that felt like MMA was having to serve very small communities as well, which sometimes stifled its voice for issues that impacted larger community and service center communities. Orono happens to be a service center community. So our needs are a little bit different than some of the outlying rural communities. Our audit services are also part of the council budget. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that it's a decreased budget this year because we've gotten more efficient with the audit process. I'm hoping that we'll be able to find some more savings by doing a hybrid of at least the initial audit not being in person, which saves us a little of their travel and lodging costs. And employee recognition. That is the catch-all for when somebody retires, whether it's a counselor or an employee, if somebody is seriously ill, when an employee, this pays for our annual employee luncheon that counselors join us at from time to time. Haven't had one in a year. Be nice to have one this year. But council budget, do you have any questions about that budget?
Sophie, the only question I had was on the dues and memberships that included travel and training. Am I correct that does not, any training we get from Maine Municipal is not included in that, or is it? So if I do a webinar with Maine Municipal, which I've done a couple of, where does the money come from for that? I know it doesn't come from them.
That comes from the council travel and training line.
Okay.
And if you guys expend that line, oftentimes I will cover it with my travel and training if I have funds available there.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sophie on council expense? Okay.
So the finance office. So the finance office, we have 2.5 people that work in that office. They are managing our payroll, our accounts payable, accounts receivable, and they keep all of, the books, for lack of a better word. We pay about $195,000 a year in personnel costs. This department also covers the internet and phone services for this building, and software licensing for the town. So that's our trio, our financial software package. Our supplies and postage, the majority of that, almost $10,000 of that is postage. What we've learned over the last few years is that people want us to communicate more with them, more postcards go out. When people are behind on their taxes, we want to send postcards out for that before they get lien claim and demand notices. So we've increased the postage line a little bit, also recognizing that postage costs went up in the last year. And our professional services, the $26,000 pays for two things. First, it pays for our processing of our payroll. ADP does that for us, but it also is the license for the HR software that we use that helps us integrate all of the employee personnel information in one place. We talked about that a few years ago when we decided to bring that on board in lieu of another body to do HR administration. Questions about finance?
Jeff?
Does the increased reliance on IT and Zooming that we're using during COVID allow us to use some of the COVID money to pay for the IT VoIP line?
I would have a hard time making that argument. Creative, I like that train of thought, but I think where it was a standard line before and it hasn't gone up, that I would have a hard time making the argument that it's COVID related. If we could buy a multi-year license for Zoom, I would say that's absolutely COVID related. But I have some ideas for that money, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
But I like the creativity.
Any other questions? All right.
Okay, so IT GIS is our catch-all. So all of the hardware for everything except for WPCF is included in this line now. We have people go through IT to purchase any hardware. Bell and Avi are managing and hopefully getting a more standard approach to how we manage our IT. One of the issues that we've been running into with IT is around security, firewalls and security protocol to make sure that the information that we have is maintained in a safe way. So personnel costs are a portion of our IT person. So this is 30 hours of our IT person. The other 10 hours are paid for out of the TIF. We talked about hardware and repair. We have moved all of our programs to the cloud in terms of people are not saving things on hard drives anymore. They're all backed up to the cloud. We use the Google Suites, and I'm glad that Bell had the forethought to get us moving in that direction, because when COVID hit, it allowed us to make a much more seamless transition. And it's also why when people contact me on a Saturday, I can grab information very quickly. So I think it's working well, but it is expensive, and that cost has gone up this year. I think Bell worked very hard to try to negotiate the price that you see there. And our professional services at about $6,500, and that's for stuff that is for the support that Avi and Bell need beyond what they are capable of. So when it's beyond basic GIS, and they'll reach out to Ray Corson, who is our consultant, or to Network Maine if needed. So questions about IT GIS? Okay. My office. So the manager's office, I think people are aware. Our prime duty, we have many, but we support town council. We also handle the HR. I serve as the finance director. We do programmatic support. So the town wellness program is funded out of my budget. Certain elements of our public health programs are funded out of this budget. I have a professional services line that allows me to pivot a little bit and meet the need for outside consultants. It's also most all of the legal expenses for the town are all of the general legal expenses, and most, which accounts for the majority of them, are funded out of my budget. This is 3 bodies, not 100% of the salary of me or the assistant town manager. Questions about my budget? No? Okay.
Anything else said?
So the town clerk's office, we're trying really hard. We've called this the town office, we've called this administration, and it really is the town clerk's office. So we're kind of moving to make that change this year. It is, it funds 3 full-time people, and they handle all of the cash over the counter. So they do all of our cash handling, all of our sewer billing, our tax billing. They collect it. I ultimately am the tax collector, but they are handling the day-to-day in the accounts work. They do all of our vital records. They are registering motor vehicles, registering people to vote. It's a very, very busy positions. This total budget is up about $16,000 over last year, about 7%, and $14,950 of that is attributable to market wage increases. And I just wanted to talk with you for just a couple of minutes about what that means. We saw a significant shift in the labor market. I think everybody sees that, right? You can go to Walmart and get a job for $15 or $16 an hour. My husband was in Lowe's yesterday, and it's $19 an hour to start. And it used to be that municipalities were a little bit insulated from that because we're kind of specialized. In the town clerk's office, it is those municipal administrative support staff are critical to allow us to function, but they also come oftentimes with no municipal background, which means that we spend an awful lot of time and resources training them to do their job. There is no degree to be a town clerk. And when the labor market shifted, we took a position, we took individuals that we know are difficult positions to fill, and we started to see the municipal market shift as well, which that's very rapid for that to happen. But I'm looking around, seeing people looking to hire folks doing the job that I am hiring for downstairs. They want to hire it starting at $20 an hour, and I was paying staff $17 an hour with 3 and 4 years of experience. So my major concern is if we stayed that far under market, we would lose the people that we've already trained and have to bring in people without training. And I also philosophically, if I'm going to be willing to spend that money on new people, why would I not pay it for the people that have already invested time and energy and know the community? Those are really critical positions. So that the budget that you see in front of you includes salary increase for the town clerk and smaller wage adjustments for her 2 deputies that work for her, bringing them up to a pay scale that starts around $19 an hour and would top out at about 22 over time. These folks are in like the second tier, so it's $19.75 total and $20.50 for the long tenured individuals. So that's when I keep talking about market shift, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Do you have any questions about the town clerk's office?
I just have a quick question. So just to make sure that I understand, when I'm looking at the full-time salary line, that increase of 12% represents the market increases in salary instead of looking for that part-time position that we were talking about before.
Yeah. So what I've done is tried to bring them up to market. And then we're trying to shift our operations a little bit. So we're taking some of the lessons learned from COVID and looking at what other communities have done. And so one lesson or one thing that we've heard over and over again is that the town office being open from 8 to 4 doesn't work for a significant segment of the population. So by moving to 4 10-hour days, we're able to be open from 7:30 to 5:30, 7:30 to 5:30. Yeah. And we are seeing people coming in early in the morning and later in the evening. So I think those hours are working for folks. But the other thing that we are doing, we had shifted so much of our work online so that individuals don't even have to come into the office if they don't want to. And we have software now that allows people to schedule appointments. So one of the things that we're doing to not have to hire that part-time person, Megan, is one of our people will deal with walk-ins. The other person will deal with appointments. So if you know that you only have a half an hour to register your car, you can come make an appointment, get in and get out. When that person doesn't have appointments, we would be able to schedule them off the counter and they'd be able to do their own work. And so far that seems to be working fairly well. And we'll just keep evaluating. But when you consider that a part-time person is going to cost us close to $27,000, that's trying to save some money where we can.
And to your point earlier, I mean, philosophically, I think that paying trusted employees that we've invested in already a market wage that's a fair wage should be the primary concern. And if that means we have to adjust some of our service level in slight ways that aren't too impactful to the community, I think that's the right choice every time.
More discussion about the town clerk, or shall I continue?
I actually just had, I guess, understanding now that that part-time position won't be there. I noticed that, and typically we've dealt with this in the past, is that the areas of concern for this department is always a bit bigger. So the expectation, obviously based from our community and making it so it's a lot of extra work to do this stuff. So these things that were listed in our binder of areas of concern, are you saying they're not so much an area of concern now, or is it still there?
So I would say that when the areas of concern were listed in your binder, we were still looking at going into the year the way we had 5 days a week, people stretched really thin. You know, part of our plan really involves council agreeing that if we give people the opportunity to make appointments because they're have short time, people can stack up a little bit and wait if they want the convenience of a walk-in. If council's not okay with that, then we really would have to look at bringing somebody else in so that we could pull people off the desk. So what we're trying to do, Terry, is work. I think that the issue is going to be a perennial issue. We're trying to see if we can address it with through operations as opposed to through money.
Thank you. I guess for me, that makes sense. I think part of more going forward, getting people more used to using online services and stuff like that to kind of alleviate that issue that we've been dealing with in that office. And it seems like it keeps getting better. I like doing things online. I don't want to have to go in either. So thank you.
Well, we love to see.
Like to, yeah, for folks, I mean, some people really do like to go in and do those things in
Yes.
person. I think that the appointment times, that's a real game changer. And I know it just came about as a result of COVID, but I'm kind of like, why did we never think of this before? because really, I mean, the thing that you worry about with residents is that, you know, 15 people are going to just coincidentally decide to come in at the same time and then be upset that they have to wait for a long time. And this way we can kind of alleviate that a bit by having people schedule appointments if they want to do in person, which I think is great. I wish we had thought of it years ago.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Right.
I'm gonna continue on.
Yep.
You have my screen again?
Yes,
All right.
town clerk's office.
So elections this coming year, their elections are down a little bit this year. It is a year when we don't have, this past year we had the presidential election. That takes a lot of staff power. Personnel costs are for election clerks and overtime for full-time staff who have to work overtime. The computers and hardware is for actual coding, the Java system that we have that Shelley has to use. We have a whole $1,100 for supplies, and the professional services are totally around coding the ballots. So one of the things that I've gone to with Belle and I have talked about, and with Shelley, is the fact that in a community of our size, hand counting ballots really doesn't make a lot of sense. It is a total game changer at the end of the night if you can hit a button and get a result, as opposed to hand counting, which can add a long time onto the end of the night. So we, as a general rule, code all of our ballots and would plan to use that system as opposed to a hand count system. Any questions about elections? Unfortunately, we won't get another $160,000 this year, I'm gonna guess, to run elections. Okay. Insurances, so the town is a self-funded unemployment company, which means that we don't pay we could use MMA and pay a flat fee every year to MMA, and it would add up to the point, if we didn't have claims, that we wouldn't have to pay as much, or we could pay a flat percentage to the state of Maine for, I think it's the first $12,000 of everybody's salary. The town many, many years ago made the decision to simply pay its own unemployment claims. So they still get processed by the state, and then we get a bill and we are expected to pay them. It is a bit of a feast or famine proposition. There are times that we can go for several years without any claims. And then during COVID, Bell has been paying claims out pretty routinely. So we have a reserve of about $40,000. And every year we appropriate $5,000 with the expectation that anything that's not spent would go into the reserve. So if we were to overspend that line, it would come out of the reserve if we needed to. I wouldn't pull out of the reserve unless we had overspent the insurance line. So if there were savings there, we would balance it. So as we've gone, yep.
I was gonna say, we've kind of looked at this historically and still feel that it's a savings in the long run to be self-insured as opposed to going with MMA.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works really well. We are not a town that has historically cut filled positions. So we tend not to pay a lot of claims. Those people who separate from us, once you get, I think it's 5 quarters out, we fall off as a responsible party anyway. We also work really hard to only terminate individuals who meet code, meet classifications like misconduct that they wouldn't qualify for a period of time. So I think our practices allow that to happen. If we were going to start thinking we were going to lay people off, then this would not be a smart way to do it, to fund unemployment.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense, Tom?
It does.
So workers' comp, as you've gone through each of the other budgets, they've had specific workers' comp lines. And it's the payroll for those lines attributed to the factor that creates the unemployment premium for that line. So everybody's job duties create their own risk factor. The lower the risk, the less the premium you pay for that individual. The general workers' comp is for all of our administrative folks. So it's the catch-all. And you will see at $2,955, pretty low risk group of people that we have there. The risk pool is, for lack of a better term, our insurance, our general liability, public officials liability, and buildings, equipment, vehicles, insurance. It's not really insurance, but that would be, I think, a discussion for a different day. We are pooling risk with a bunch of other municipalities, and MMA manages this for us. The trainings and the programs for $1,500. As I think I talked about earlier, to respond to a question that Councillor Wingart had offered, the town has spent an awful lot of resource, whether it's financial, time, to build a culture of safety. And part of that includes routine trainings coming together as a group. Sometimes it is helping to fund special safety and wellness initiatives that that will work across town departments. Sometimes it's a grant match that will allow a department to get new equipment that they need. This does fund, as part of this, funds our annual day that we bring staff together to focus on safety. And I think we talked extensively about that last year, about why I thought that was so important. But I think that that's important, to stop work for a couple of hours and focus on how to be safe, and send the message that we expect that as a core approach to working for us. Questions about our insurances? My goodness, we're just flying. General assistance, every October, you guys review the annual program maximums that the state provides to us for the general assistance program. General assistance is local welfare, is what it used to be termed at. It is supposed to be a stopgap assistance program for people who need assistance meeting basic needs. Those expenses that meet with the general assistance program requirements, which are created by the Department of Human Services, we receive reimbursement at 70%. And so what you see here is a $13,100 expense, has 70% of that as a revenue. So the expectation being, if we spend $1, we'll get 70 cents back for that dollar. And you see that on the revenue side. I will, in 100% transparency, there are times that Shelley, Bell, and I will come together, and when we're working with somebody who does not qualify under the terms of general assistance, but really needs some assistance, this is a place that we would go to for that, and potentially not be able to submit for reimbursement. So just to let you know. There is some pending legislation in Augusta that could dramatically impact the reimbursement rate. Looking at the way we are using general assistance program, I think it would add some cost to us, but I don't think it would hit us as hard as it would some of the larger communities that have 10 or 15 times this budget for general assistance. But that's one of those places, since we have a representative watching this meeting, participating in this meeting, that it would be a shame to see a cost shift to the municipalities for general assistance. So that's general government. Yes.
How do we, this is probably a function of DHHS, not a municipality, but how do we address the case of citizens that are in need, that are unable to advocate for themselves?
So we do that a couple of ways. If people know about it, I mean, of course, if nobody knows, nobody can really do anything, right? But if we know about it or can get information, we will oftentimes send an emissary to try to explain what might be available. So it's been Ed Lesky at times, it's been Shelley at times. Bell is really good at coming up with totally off the wall reasons to need to talk to somebody and kind of make sure that they're aware. When we hear about it, we try to find ways. And we also have a couple of people in the community that are our go-to when people don't want to take government money, which we have some from time to time. We've done food boxes before. We've bought sneakers and sweatshirts for school. We've guess the answer, Jeff, is we try to let people know. We also try to connect with, do some outreach with churches, and Duska at the Housing Foundation would be somebody else that she is aware and will send people to us. Landlords, we let them know, especially if it's an issue around housing, they'll send people to us. I think on the one hand, you don't want to like put a flag out that says, come see us with any need. But on the other hand, we really want to get to
Yes.
individuals that have a legitimate need. And what we will do, Shelley and Belle do an amazing job. If we can't solve it with general assistance, working to link them with other available resources, whether they be at the town or in the community. And that's, if you know of somebody, you should let us know, and we'll send Belle on a mission.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The other place, just so you are aware, like if the fire department gets called to a residence where it's clear, for example, somebody doesn't have any food in the cupboards, I will get a referral on that and we'll reach out. So that's another way that we do it. That's general government. Are we ready to move on to the exciting debt?
Sure.
So debt this year is a little different. We brought on $2.25 million of new debt. $2 million of that was for public works and $250,000 of that was for fiber. It's looking like OTO Fiber might not need those $250,000 funds. They are making their way through their program, and they'll be back in touch with us when they have a final information. But that 2.25 million equates to, trying to get to my place in there, equates to about $145,000 of new debt payment, which if you look, our total debt is up about what, 140 or 20%. So it's mostly attributable to that new debt that we brought on. The other thing to remember with our bonds is our bonds do not have linear payments. We are in a period where we're overlapping some debt that was not callable. So we're going to have a little bit of a peak in some areas, and to try to offset the hit to taxes, we reduced payments in other areas on the bonds. So I'm hoping it will kind of flow through nicely for the next 3 years. And in year 4, we will see a little bit of a jump, but it shouldn't be huge, just a little hop. So our principal payments, a little over $500,000 with interest at about 288. Interest is higher than normally we would see a larger principal payment, but that is part of that, trying to manage the bump in the bond. Questions about that? To answer your question that you didn't ask is these are previously agreed to obligations that cannot be changed. So that's $850,000 in the budget. Other, I love this. I didn't name it, but I think it's pretty cool. We have other. So other is fairly significant. It's $8,048,820. And the miscellaneous is some fees associated with our, I don't know why it's there, but it's historic. Our flex account administration is there, along with still have $750 that is for previously retired individuals. There were some programs that the town used to continue making premium payments for. We do that. We've phased out the program, but people who had retired under that program, we have to continue because it was part of the deal. County tax is up this year a little bit. Our school tax is down about $152,000. Regional transit, that is the community connector. That's the one that goes from town to town with the hub in Bangor. This is an increase this year, but that's because there was CARES Act money that community connector got last year, and they decided to continue with our assessments through the end of last year and apply it into a credit into FY21. That credit is gone, so now we've bounced back up into the regular FY22 assessments. And council, you always have a huge contingency at $10,000, and I am joking. On our budget, that's pretty small, but that is there. Many years you can go without using it, but it's always good to have that, like the year that we had the salt affected well, or there's a project that council really wants to do, something that doesn't have funding. You've got a little bit of money there without having to tap into reserves. That is what I have for general government. Let me just try to get out of here.
So any questions on the material we've seen tonight so far? Pretty straightforward. Cheryl,
I have
Yes.
one question, but I'm not sure if it's answerable. I was wondering if the $15,000 that we pay for the cloud, if that includes any kind of insurance or anything. I know that I've been hearing about municipalities getting hacked and all that fun stuff. Is that anything that we are covered for or against?
Yeah, I'm going to pass that along to Belle because she manages IT and insurances.
So that's within the cloud services. That's primarily the kind of like the software that we use, and also some of the backup services that we use, particularly for the police department, because they have to have a special backup service that is authorized for sensitive justice material. But the insurance is actually covered in the risk pool, and we do have the rider for cybersecurity, so that if we were attacked, that we would be able to have coverage for that. The good thing about the system that we have set up, and golly, I hope nobody is watching this and, you know, gonna get me for hubris, but everything is kept on secure servers at Google, essentially. So we outsource a lot of our security to some of the best tech engineers in the world, rather than trying to do it ourselves. We have backup systems for everything that we have. Our software is a cloud backup system that we pay extra for through Trio. The front desk software, the accounting software, same thing. The police department, as I mentioned, it has a special backup system too. So we try to make sure that we have backups for everything offsite and available for download in case we should get hacked. We're on the alert, and we're trying to make sure that we're doing the right things as well. And the insurance company tries to help us by asking questions like, are you doing these X, Y, and Z things? So we have insurance. We try to make sure we have all the backups and that we're taking the right precautions.
Thank you, Belle.
Any other questions? I see none.
I don't have a presentation for facilities. We took it out of order, and so I'm just gonna give you the highlight and
Yep.
answer any questions you have. the facilities budget is $364,335. That's the operating budget. That budget maintains 5 buildings. So the cleaning, general maintenance, repairs, and utilities for 5 buildings and life safety systems for all of the buildings. It's an increase of $6,460 or about 2%. With $4,500 attributable to personnel costs. And the personnel costs were in health insurance and a 2% cost of living increase for this department. So that's operations. And then there are 4 capital projects that I just want to review with you that are on here. So I didn't know if people had specific questions about the facilities budgets or. Okay.
It's not.
So the
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry, Sophie, can
Oh,
I?
go ahead.
I just, never having done this before, is the facilities budget itemized by property, and is that, if so, is that like proportional to the size of the property or the usage of the property, or how does that work?
So the facilities budget has a general component, which is where all of the personnel costs live, because it doesn't matter what happens in what department, what building. From there, so those general costs, and also understand facilities isn't just about buildings. They also are responsible for maintaining the structures of the pool. They're plowing downtown, the Main Street sidewalks, the sidewalks that Rob can't get his equipment down. They're also responsible for maintaining all of the amenities appurtenant to buildings, which would be the walkways, the stairs, the things that we have liability for. So those general labor costs and general costs are all in general facilities. From there, we break it out in one budget for public safety and the municipal office. That's one building, one budget put together. And I inherited that. Rob Yerkes and I are working through how to structure the budget. Facilities is in a little bit of a transition right now. So we're kind of working through that. But we've got public safety and administration, understanding that these 2 buildings share some systems, heat, some electricity. It's kind of an odd setup that we have here. Keith Anderson House, the Birch Street School, and the library would be other cost centers that are broken out kind of by division. All of those totaled up is the $364,000. So natural gas, we allocate it to each building. We want to be able to see and pay attention to the costs associated with each building, maintenance, things like that. We really don't want to lump all together, if possible.
Is there any, I'm sorry. Is there any accommodation here for like the unused property down on Penobscot Street or anything like that? We don't maintain that. Okay.
No, Rob will go out and put new plywood up, move more Jersey barriers when it gets broken into, but we're not setting aside actual dollars to maintain that building. Which is, part of, nice segue into the discussion of, I think one of the issues that we have is we have buildings that, and amenities that we have never put money aside to maintain. So we've got the old fire station on North Main Avenue, and there's $5,000 in the budget this year for a small piece of the work. And then for the next 2 years after that, more money in the budget. The question is, what do we want to do with the fire station on North Main Avenue? It was a place that the Boy Scouts had a long-term lease that nobody could find, but a 99-year lease. But they didn't have the funds to be able to keep it up. And so we had to go in, we had to take the chimney down, the heating system's gone, it needs work. now is do we want to expend those funds on that work now? Do we want to look at, would it make a good home for the Historical Society if they wanted to fundraise to be able to maintain it? Would it be a good, would somebody else get a better use out of that? I don't want to tell council what it should do with extra properties, but they are costly, not just in annual maintenance, which we haven't had for the fire station, much of, but long-term actually maintaining it in a way that it should be maintained. We're going to see some pretty significant bills coming up for, we've talked a lot about Keith Anderson, and I think the fire station would be the other piece of that. So that's my segue for, no, we have not put money aside to take care of those amenities. But perhaps it's time for a larger discussion about what council's priorities are with those pieces of property. I mean, my assumption is you either want to maintain them so that they look the way you would expect other people in the community to maintain their properties, or you would want to think about selling them or public-private partnerships to mitigate some of the costs moving forward, is kind of where my head is kind of at with that. But that's my $5,000 old fire station is in the budget to do some work there. And I don't think that is work that can be just set aside for future. I think if we want to maintain the fire station, we are going to need to repair the holes in the soffit and, you know, take care of some structural things in there. Did I answer your question, or did I go way far afield?
No, that was great. I agree. We need to have that sort of more global discussion before we start throwing good money after bad into this project.
So when I look at capital facilities requests, we took the rink off the plan, which is fine. The elevator pump, so that's in the municipal building, and that's what ensures that the elevator goes up when it's supposed to go up and comes down the way it's supposed to come down. And for the last 2 years, we have heard it rebalances. I can be sitting in here on a Saturday when nobody's in the building, so it's nice and quiet, and I hear that pump rebalancing quite frequently. We've had ThyssenKrupp come in and look at it. They gave us a quote for $15,000 a year and a half ago. My understanding is they're going to stand by that quote. Given the scarcity of equipment, we might have some issue with that, but I don't think that is something that we really want to play with, because if the elevator is taken out of service, we're still going to have to fix it to maintain some compliance in the building. The energy efficiency audit, this was a council project that came in 2 years ago, got moved ahead. If councilors are looking to shave some money out of the budget, I think this work is really important, but I wonder if this is something that we might look to capstone project to help us with, or Cheryl with the environment committee might be able to help us find some volunteers that could help us with this project to try to come up with some future projects or priorities. And the final is the Zoom, the council chamber upgrade. This is the audio visual upgrade. And it wasn't until I was looking back at a previous meeting after we started on Zoom that I really saw the difference. Our current streaming capabilities out of council chamber, I can tell it's Counselor Gardner because she has long reddish brown hair. Can't see her face at all. It just, we don't have that capability. And so we want to
It's a
upgrade.
good thing though. I don't want people at home seeing me if I'm making a funny face or something. I'm just-
Yeah. So we want to do a little bit of upgrade. And we also want to be able to get to a hybrid meeting, thinking that even though we're kind of seeing hopefully a beginning of an end of our pandemic behaviors, what we're hearing is that people are going to want perhaps to stay a little bit isolated for time to come. And to be able to hybrid meetings where we could bring you back in a space so we could enjoy the one-on-one. But if a counselor, for example, couldn't be here, they could still Zoom in and we would be able to stream it out in a way that is more compatible for the public. So Bella and I thought we were a little high with $20,000. It took us forever to get a vendor in to give us a budget estimate. And when he did, what came back was $60,000 to $85,000. So Bell is working through that quote to see where the scopes might be able to be shaved down. But we've also identified this one as a premier place to be able to justify the use of some of those ARPA funds. And so one suggestion I have to council is the thought of pulling this off the capital budget now with the idea of funding it potentially with ARPA funds later on this year. So that's my 2 cents. I told Tom that I would be better at giving you options. So those are my options around facilities.
Question. Sophie, was
Sure.
that a bid? Was the 60 to 85,000 a bid from just one vendor?
So
Not
when
a bid. I mean
yeah.
a price. Yeah.
A price. So when I put the budget together, when I first got here, it was, we had some folks that just kind of their best estimate for a figure. So what I require is more than just your best estimate. So we go out and get a budget estimate. Oftentimes it will be a little bit higher than what somebody thinks they're going to put in for an RFP. Something of that size would not come from a single vendor. We would put it out for an RFP. And they want to give themselves a little bit of wiggle room. They don't want to put their price out there in a way that it's public so that somebody can bid $100 less and get the work. So we expect those budget estimates, if we use them in a timely manner, to be a little high.
Thank you.
So I like the idea of doing the work, and I also like the idea of using non-budget funds to do it. I think that makes it not only convenient for council, but convenient for the public to listen, participate, and I think that's a good direction to go in.
Anybody have any objection to me just pulling that off now and making changes as a revision in the budget? I don't see any. Okay.
No.
What about the energy audit? Do you want me to keep that there for further discussion? Do you want to just keep it there, period? Or would you like me to pull that off and make it an adjustment?
Laurie?
I do this for a living, and my experience is that I've never found a building that couldn't be made more energy efficient. And only in the most new buildings that are less than 10 years old, are the upgrades more expensive than it would be worth to make. In other words, we build them so tightly that there's not a lot of room to, as I say, put in the long underwear. The older the building is, usually the easier it is to find ways to make it energy efficient. And it's so leaky the older they are that those upgrades are always worth the investment. To make those upgrades, you need to have evaluated the building to determine what would be the wise thing to do. And the best way to do that is have someone who has a big picture view and has no particular focus on any one kind of fix, because if someone's skill is to hammer, then everything's a nail. And so the best would be to have someone who has a big picture view. I had agreed to do that and just walk around with the staff and give my suggestions, and that wasn't taken on. And now I don't have the time to do it for free, and doing it for, or even doing it for pay, but that would be a conflict of interest. So I am completely supportive, because after all, this is what I do for a living. I believe, as Megan feeds people, and I'm sure if you asked her if feeding people was important, she would say it is. And Jeff teaches people. If you asked him if teaching was important, he would say it is. So as a person who does this for a living, I think it's important. As a person who's concerned about both the carbon footprint of our town and the cost to make the buildings comfortable for the people who are in them, I'm sure that investing in figuring out the best way to lower energy use would be a good investment, and make the buildings more comfortable for our workers who do come in, when they come in. At one point, the estimate was for these services was a ballpark figure that was, I think, 5,000, and over the years now it looks like it's 10,000. 20,000. So it's a lot of money, but in my experience of the federal government addressing energy efficiency or addressing various investments, they want, quote, shovel-ready projects. And so the other reason to invest in this is so that if there was money that came down to address energy efficiency at the municipal level, that we would already know what projects we would want to do, because we would have someone evaluate and say, here's the first thing and here's why I think so. Here's the second thing and here's why I think so. So I think that it's a good investment for us in our responsibility of looking at the long-term, lowering energy costs, lowering carbon footprints, and also having projects available so that if there was funding at the federal level, that we would be ready to make proposals for those funds. So I would love to see it included. Of course, it's a cost. I have not looked at what money is available that's coming to the counties, that we might partner with them. So I don't know how else we would get it paid for. It's great that you can come up with a suggestion on how we would continue to be able to do remote meetings and come up with a way to take it out of our budget but still get the work done. I think that's great. So I don't know about that, but there's my pitch that I would like to see us keep it in, because I think we're supposed to be the big picture thinkers, and I think it's a big picture thing to know what the long-term goal is. As far as it being a capstone project, or I've been doing this for a long time. I can't think of anyone who would be able to do this. The best would be when Efficiency Maine used to have commercial people that worked for Efficiency Maine that would go into commercial municipal churches and give advice. And I think that program has phased out, and they didn't charge for it. Those were Efficiency Maine employees that did that, or subcontractors that had specialty in commercial buildings. So I think that ship has sailed, but I think it's something we have to pay for if we want it. I think that trying to have it go through the university, there's no one who really teaches this yet at the university level. And so I can't imagine how it could be a school project and have the supervision that would make it a viable project, or give us valuable information anyway.
Yeah. Other comments on this topic?
Yeah, I think
Yes, Joe?
that I think it is a big picture project, but I do think that coming down the pike, I think we can hold off for a little bit, and we can hold off because there is money coming for energy audits and weatherization projects and things like that. And Efficiency Maine is still very big in this on this front right now. I don't know what we have budgeted for an energy audit right now, but I do know that it's part of our climate. It's going to be part of our regional climate plan. And we will be partnering probably with Bangor and the University of Maine and Hudson. And so we're looking at this in the future. So I don't know. I kind of think we should hold off and see if we can get some of our state funding to cover this, because I think it is coming, but it's hard to judge right now. So it's hard to say one way or the other, but I think we can hold off for just a little bit anyway.
As far as efficiency main, they've moved to not covering the cost of the analysis, but giving incentives for when the work is done. And so whether you're a big box store that's changing your electrical lamps, or you're a homeowner that's putting in a heat pump, it's after the investment, or in the case of the changing the big box store, changing the lamps at the point of sale, or even with some heat pumps for commercial, at the point of sale, the incentive comes from efficiency main to the seller, or in the case of homes, that goes after you've spent the money, it goes to the homeowner, but none of those cover the cost of the assessment. So in the past, they did have this idea that they'd have people who helped with the commercial, but now that is something that's responsibility of the person or the person in the municipality or the church or a commercial building, commercial people, that they, how they decide what they're going to do is up to them. And that's not reimbursed. So for example, efficiency main doesn't give me any money. People hire me because I help them get money from efficiency main. And that's at the commercial level and at the homeowner level. That's the way they, it's still not clear to people. People will call me and say, oh, I understand efficiency main pays for your audit. I'm like, nope, they don't. You have to pay me if you want to hear what I have to say, but I help you get the rebates. And that's even if there's money coming down the pike to help municipalities make energy efficient upgrades, they're not going to pay for the analysis. And as far as my experience, again, buildings ranging from 200 years old to 10 years old, the average savings is about 35%, which is huge. If you could save 35% on everything you bought, you would go change stores. Megan, did you?
I just want to kind of maybe not put a pin in this, but I just want to pause here to just say that I feel like I'm hearing different things from reputable people. So I'm hearing things from our town manager and from Councilor Robertson, from Councilor Osher, that seem to be, on the one hand, we have to do this audit. Like, if I feel like we're all invested in this goal of doing this kind of work. But I feel like I'm hearing from one reputable source, we have to pay for this. This is the only way to do it. We have to do this audit. We have to pay for this audit. And this is the first step. But then I'm also hearing these other options that seem to be coming from Sophie and from Cheryl about, well, there could be other ways to fund this kind of work. And I don't feel like I'm in a position to say, well, yes, obviously one person is correct. Or does that make sense? Like, I feel like we're getting conflicting information, and I don't feel comfortable making a decision on this when there's such opposing but credible information being presented right now. So I don't know where to go with that, but.
I think that, like, a municipality would not get any work unless there'd been estimates. And so there is the way to go.
Lori, I understand what you are saying. What I'm saying is I would kind of like to put like to put a pause on this, because I don't think that it's possible for us to determine in this conversation, like, who's correct or most correct in this, because it seems like opposing information here. So I guess I'm more looking to Sophie in terms of, like, how can we get a clearer picture of what our options might be?
I think that's a good point. I agree. Laura, did you want to say something? And welcome. Oh.
I realize I'm
you-
joining late. I understand that I had a work meeting that's long standing. I understand that we have the option of taking it out of the budget and turning the decision over to the Environment Committee. Is that still on the table? Because if we're feeling like we can't make the decision and determine it, then is that an option?
Environment
think-
Committee? I don't think we said we were going to turn it over to the Environment Committee. I think we're getting some advice from the Environment Committee representative.
So Cheryl is not immediately hitting her unmute button. So that, I don't disagree with the notion that we need to have an audit before we move forward. I totally agree with that. My issue is, I think Cheryl is absolutely right that the current federal and state administration have prioritized getting green. And I don't know what's coming down the pike for money. I do know that we have a lot of things in play. And council was telling me last time we met that it was really looking to try to find some savings in this budget. A majority of councilors were looking to find some savings. So I am suggesting to you that I know this is a council priority, much like the Keith Anderson House. I did not know if we could bring people who are experts together to help us. And I think what I would suggest, and this is where Cheryl can hit her unmute and tell me to be quiet, is we're coming together on the 3rd to make some final decisions. I think between now and the 3rd, Cheryl and I could reach out to Dan Dixon, who is kind of our technical guide, would you say, Cheryl? Yeah, okay. And I can also reach out to Kathy Conlow in Bangor, because I know that Bangor is also working on this. But I also think when it comes, this might go into planning. And there are often planning funds available to municipalities. So, I mean, we can absolutely raise the money, add it to our budget, and then not use it. I just figured that it might be worth it for us to slide it off the budget, try to find an alternative way to do this. And if we can't, we can come back. I mean, we have made appropriations out of overlay for important things before. We could potentially do it again this year. I'm not suggesting we don't do it. I'm suggesting maybe we don't have it as a line item.
I agree, and I think that because there is kind of a level of uncertainty right now about what money is kind of coming down the pike, and I'm not saying it's not important either. It is important, and it will have to be done. I mean, that's a given. But it might be something we could just hold off on for just a little bit, like Sophie said, and then just kind of wait and see what's happening, because we are working on things like weatherization, and especially with municipal buildings, we're working on a lot of things right now. So I think it's safe to say we can hold off on it, but it definitely has to be done at some point. But then it's a question of what money is available and how we can have access to it, and we're working on that too. So it's just such an uncertain time right now, but it is an important thing that has to be done. I agree with that.
So Sophie, I heard you say that you might have some additional information at our next meeting to make a final decision on this item, that we don't have to make a final decision tonight. I think we all agree it's important work and it should be done. The question is, how is it going to get done? Okay. Ready to move on?
I am. So that is what I had for the budget review. And I think that takes us through the entire 200 and something page budget that you all received. My plan is to kind of talk with you for a few minutes tonight to get some targets for staff to work through through this week to get you some new documents that hopefully will frame a good discussion on Thursday, June 3rd, about the final budget that you'd like to see presented to the community. Most of the time when I present a budget, it is the budget that council would plan to adopt unless the community comes out in full force one way or the other with a feeling. Add this, subtract this, which I have to admit, I don't think that has happened in the 10 years I've been here. I think we pretty much present the budget that you want to adopt and end up adopting that budget. So we'll work on some documents. I have received communication from all but 2 counselors about areas that they would either like to see or us revisit or their priorities. And I'm working to kind of pull those all into one document so that everybody gets to have the full discussion that they would like. This is where things get interesting, folks, because one of the things I hear is we want the mill rate to stay the same or go down, right? And so this is where we talked about last week, where I can't, on an apples to apples comparison of value, using last year's value again, I can't provide the level of service that rolls all, restores all of the things we cut last year in without changing the mill rate. I can't have increased services without increasing the mill rate. However, I have been reluctant to roll in new valuation data. I have the first cut of our new valuation data. I got it late last week, got it on Friday. And I spent the weekend reviewing it. And it is super interesting to look at it because we're talking about adjusting value from 1990 to 2021. So there are some pretty big shifts. The median household, so let me start by saying this is absolutely draft information. Staff is currently going through it to make sure that we're not missing accounts. Staff is reviewing, like, they've made some assumptions about neighborhoods. We need to go back and change a couple of those assumptions about neighborhoods. So this is just to give us a feeling of where we are. And that feeling is that we are up considerably in value. If we could conservatively look at about a $50 million increase in our value, which if I apply the 4.5% revenue sharing to our revenue budget, would bring, without making any other changes in our expense budget, we would bring the mill rate down to about 20, what did I say earlier today, Tom? 25.60?
It was 25 plus.
Yeah, I think it was 25.60. And so that's a considerable drop. For some people, that will equate to a decrease in their property taxes. For other people, it will equate to an increase in their property taxes because their values were so depressed previously. When I have not added value in because I wanted to show an apples to apples comparison. And I talked with Tom earlier today, and I think the way to do that on Monday is to look at the median household value of $175,000, which is what we had before the reval. The new median household value is $209,000. So if we look at the comparison on taxes, because theoretically, if everybody was paying their fair share before, that same $175,000 house would now be valued at $209,000, and that will give you a sense of the drop in mill rate compared to the increase in
Value.
expense, because we do have an increase in expense. So keeping that in mind, are you good with trying to take a conservative approach to the value to get a sense of where the mill rate is and what that means for the community?
Sophie, when you say conservative approach to the value, are you saying looking at the
So
$50 million increase in value?
I would pull out 50 million. I need to do a little bit more because the commercial that came to me includes tax exempt properties, some that I could easily pull out and others that you might not think are tax exempt that are. So I want to work a little bit more with the value.
Laura?
So I guess like if we're right sizing the values, I guess that to me is, I understand it's a piece of the budget overall. It feels like a separate piece than what should our expenses look like. And so I guess while it matters, I also feel like we need to be thinking about our expenses and our sustainability of whether this works for our town. And so I guess I would like to, yes, one, take a really conservative look at that increasing value, and also get a read from council, like, okay, if we have that revenue, do we want to spend it in the way that's presented here? Or are there other ways that we want to spend it? Does that make sense?
I lost you when you started talking about other ways that we might spend it, to tell you the truth.
Well, if you have, I mean, we were trying to get to a place of potentially lowering our expenses to meet the revenue that we had projected right now, which is low. So now we're saying we have more revenue. Are we going to just say, okay, we have enough money and we're going to spend it in the way that this budget is presented? Or are we going to say, okay, we have more money. Do we want to spend it in different ways?
So my sense is that we're going to continue to look at the expense side. We're going to look at the items that we have all identified that we'd like to revisit. And we're going to have a discussion about those items, regardless of where the value is to whether we want those items in the budget or not in the budget. And to help us with that, I think it is also, for at least for me, important to know the other side of it, and that's the revenue side and what that's going to look like. So I don't think we're saying we're going to take additional revenue and just keep the budget the way it is. But I think knowing what's available is going to be a factor perhaps in how we look at the items we've all identified, if that made any sense. So for you plan to, we're not meeting Monday, actually, we're meeting Thursday.
A week
Right.
from this coming Thursday.
Yes, a week from this coming June 3rd. And at that point in time, we're going to look at the items that people have identified, and we're going to review those and see if we want to keep those in the budget or not in the budget. And we're also going to look at the information that you've been talking about in terms of value and revenue.
I think from my perspective, some of the feedback I've gotten from counselors has to do with the tax rate. And the tax rate is going to be something that we are resetting that with this reval. We reset to a new rate that we will then be comparing to. So yes, I guess the answer to your question is yes.
And I just have one more. So Sophie, with this new valuation, are you saying that we can get a mill rate of 25.6? We can get down that low?
I am not saying that. I mean, I
Okay.
said it, but I'm not saying it. I am
All right.
suggesting that if the numbers I've seen hold and the Governor Mills change package goes through at 4.5%, that is a possibility. And I've
Possibility.
talked with Tom a little bit about the fact that in the past, council has always given me a target mill rate, which I then work with the assessor to bring in an overlay that kind of works with that. With a revow, we are going to want to have a higher overlay, which is one of the reasons I want to be very conservative with the budget. So we're not publishing a 25 mill rate and turn around and people get tax bills on a 27 mill rate.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Yes.
As a group, are we prepared to walk in and in one meeting, like, Sophie, I'm assuming that you haven't shared a collective list. Like, did I miss that earlier today?
No,
Or
it's
no?
correct.
No, I plan to share the collective list later this week. We're working on a chart for you to narrow the focus down to the things that council wants to revisit, put pertinent information there and impacts from staff's guidance on what the impact of funding or not funding that would be.
Okay. And we're feeling good about this. This is all happening in one meeting. Like to me, that seems like, wow, that could be a lot for one meeting.
If we need to meet again, we'll have to meet again. What's up with,
The meeting you're
what-
talking about is the 3rd.
yes,
I will be in Augusta and probably will not be back in time for the meeting.
Hmm.
So that gives us 1 week in between that Thursday and the Monday, the 14th. So if we need to meet again, we can. I had that week to give me time to prepare the presentation.
I mean, I feel comfortable with the process. This doesn't feel remarkably different. I mean, some of the details are a little murkier this year, but it's been a weird year, but the process is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's similar to what we do each season. And I think Tom's right. I mean, sometimes we can hash it out in one meeting. Sometimes we need to stick a little extra meeting in there. We'll see what happens.
So what was our mill rate last year?
28.09.
And that was a slightly less than the year before?
No. it
No,
No,
was
that was
like-
significantly more than the year before. The year before was 27. That because we got a significant increase from the school. Remember, we cut to get down to 0 on the municipal side.
But now the municipal revenue sharing is supposedly going to be funded this
So
year.
there are
That's good.
There are two, right now it's funded at 3.75, which is what your documents currently show. The legislature passed a bill in the House and the Senate for 5%. It's sitting on the appropriations table right now. The governor submitted a change package at 4%, 4.5%, which would add about $400,000 more revenue into our budget at 4.5%. Something tells me while I would love 5%, something tells me that they're probably going to, if they shift, it will go to the 4.5%.
But that's more than what you put in because you're
Correct.
protecting us from overestimating.
We have 3.75 in the budget
Thank you.
currently.
Till we see that money.
Yeah.
As a business person, you don't do it until you see that money.
I'm just waiting for the legislature to take final action. And I think my hope is even if they end up doing that at the very end, of the year, which we've run into that before. We know we can come back in August before we commit taxes and make changes. But I think that ultimately, it would make sense to at least get a vote under our belt, because revenue sharing is based on receipts and it will be what it is, but I would feel much better know what that percentage is.
Mhm.
So
the only-
yeah, this is a little bit ahead of the, this isn't quite the meeting where I would normally talk about the public presentation, but in the interest of, I don't think I'm going to change my mind on this idea, and it gives you more time to think about it if you wanted to work with it, incorporate it. I think it would be really helpful for the public to understand the ways in which the mill rate has been almost kind of artificially suppressed for the past couple of years. I mean, the magic tricks that have kind of, not magic, I mean, that I don't mean to make light of this, but the ways in which it, it's a little bit of move this around and make this go here to keep it artificially low, and how that fits in with the reval, which, so in a sense, our property value has been kind of not artificially suppressed, but suppressed for where it should be. So I think that maybe the public doesn't always understand how that picture works, and they just look at a mill rate that kind of creeps up over time, a little bit here and there, or sometimes bigger here and there jumps. But I think that to kind of compare that to where we thought we would have to go all the way up to into the 30s, and maybe we get to pull back from that. But I think that it would be really helpful for the public to understand that better, because I don't get the sense that they often do.
Mm. Other comments?
I was just going to say that I didn't submit anything, Sophie, but I don't know if maybe you caught it. I'm just really interested in different cost scenarios for the pool this summer. So,
We're actually going to talk about that in my manager's report.
okay. All right, good. Then I'm good. Thank you.
So I do think, I just say again, I think Laura raises a valid issue and a valid question, that we need to look not just at mill rate, but at how the expense budget has changed. And that's why we're going to go through the items that people have identified on the 3rd. See if we want to make any adjustments. Sophie, you anything else for us?
Nope. I think I have a path forward.
Great. Did you was there another item on the agenda? Was there a manager's report, or okay?
I have a manager's report, and it is budget related. Well, got a couple of items. The first is the pool. So every week we are closer to pool season. I don't know if folks saw in the newspaper that Splashtown has indicated that they are only going to be open 5 days a week because they too are feeling the labor shortage. We went in with the university in hopes of kind of trying to mitigate some of that shortage. They are running into the same issues that everybody else is. So we continue to try to identify folks that will be lifeguards or are good swimmers and want to learn how to be a lifeguard. So understand, my job is to offer you options. It is not necessarily to vet those options for whether I like them or not. And one of the things I heard from the last meeting is that opening the pool was really, really important to the community. So one option that I looked at, Mitch and I looked at, Megan, was the idea, we reached out to the insurance company to understand the liability associated with not having lifeguards. And what we learned is that the town can 100% or some hybrid fashion open the pool as long as it is clearly placarded that no lifeguard is on duty, and as long as there is some town personnel there. So I need an individual there who can tell people to stop running and call the police to come help if we have people who are not following the rules. That is an option that would allow us to have the pool open. It limits young people. Wouldn't you have to have an adult, adult supervision, so you couldn't drop your third grader off or fourth grader off to hang out at the pool. But that is an option. We would be looking, no matter how we did it, to follow some of the other guidance we've heard around not opening locker rooms and having a shower on deck so that people can shower before they get on into the pool and shower when they get out of the pool. My sense is with lifeguards, we can probably do some coverage, but depending on the number of lifeguards we have, one option would be to kind of hybrid that approach to say, for example, and I am not offering this up for council to give me direct feedback on what hours the pool should be doing what, because I guess I see that as an operations discussion, but rather as an example to share that one option might be to have a lifeguard on for 12 to 4, and then from 5 to 7 have it open for family swim with parental supervision as an option. Again, not making any, I'm not giving you an opinion on what I think about that. I'm just offering it as an option.
I just have a question about liability. So I understand, obviously, like with the signage of swimming at your own risk, then I understand in theory that should protect the town, but I don't know. I'm thinking about the scenario in which, hope it would never happen, but there is town staff present. Somebody's child is drowning, something catastrophic happens. The town, I understand what the legal parameters might be as long as it's posted at your own risk, but I feel very uncomfortable about the thought of community members feeling that the community members would feel the town was responsible. That's my feeling.
I don't disagree with you.
But from a legal standpoint, you're saying there wouldn't be any legal liability. It would
So
be.
we wouldn't have any legal liability, and we would have insurance coverage. The insurance company requires that we have a staff person there to ensure that the community isn't going in and damaging our property. And for me, it would be to also call for help.
Right. And so as a follow-up, what would a town employee then be protected by a Good Samaritan law if they did intervene and attempt to help somebody who is in distress, or would they have to sit there and say, I can't?
I think they have to sit and say they can't, because they'd be working outside of their area of training. So what we know is if somebody's been trained for something and they do it under the town's umbrella, we have wide breadth of immunity. Where that immunity starts to get very thin or disappear is when somebody does something that they have not been trained for. So if it's a matter of reaching down and grabbing somebody by their flotation device and hauling them out, I don't think anybody can argue with that. If it's trying to do CPR and they've never had CPR training, we would have, I think, an issue there if something bad happened. So again, I did not offer an opinion.
Yeah.
I am telling you, I reached out to our technical people to find out what we could or could not do.
I'll just say that scenario makes me very uncomfortable. as a former lifeguard.
Mm.
Like maybe come work at the pool.
Is there a precedent at town pools of doing this?
I don't think you find many. Outdoor lakes, places where like Gould's Landing, we could have it posted swim at your own risk. We have it posted no swimming, but we could post it swim at your own risk, and we wouldn't have liability. We'd make it clear that there's no lifeguard on duty. I've seen it at length at beaches, lakes, parks. I have not seen it at other municipal pools, but I will admit I'm not a other municipal pool connoisseur.
One other question, the limited hours or the usage, seems reasonable to me. The locker rooms being downgraded into a bathroom seems reasonable to me. Bathroom only kind of thing. I would still wonder about swim lessons. I think there's an opportunity if it's family swim time and it's a limited number that you could not have a lifeguard, like an evening type of thing. And we're still talking about limited numbers regardless, right?
Whoops, went backwards there. Talking with Christy, I think what we're looking at, our hope is to get to 4. 4 would allow us more than 25, less than 100 people. So I think it would not be quite as limited as what we had before. That is if we can get full staffing. If we can't get full staffing, we've got to have at least 2 to open it. We can't open a pool that size with less than 2.
Mhm.
And we need to be able to, I mean, I personally think we need to be able to publish reasonably, hours that we're going to be able to maintain. What I don't want to do is publish that we're open from 12 to 7 and somebody show up at 4 and have us not be open. I mean, I think that would be a big mistake.
Sophie, Laura mentioned swim lessons. Is there any update on that?
So I'm going to say what I've said a couple of times, which is if we have staffing, I think the priority would be to try to do some amount of swim lessons. From my perspective, if you're asking me from an operational lens, if I only have 20 hours of time that the pool can be open, and the pool is usually open 62 hours a week, if I can only open it for 20 hours because that's the level of staffing I have a hard time prioritizing 4 hours a week of that 20 for a limited number of people to get swim lessons. I would prioritize, if I've got a limited number of hours the pool can be open, I would assume we would want it open for everybody to be able to enjoy.
Is there a possibility of the university supplying lifeguards and blending those lifeguards with some community members? As we have done in the
I don't know. Do you think we have community members who would like to be lifeguards?
Well, we in past years have had non-university people.
So we are sending everybody to the university to go through the hire process. They are not limited just to their students. It is
Gotcha.
anybody who wants to be a lifeguard. They can apply through our portal to go. It takes them to the university. So anybody, the only reason we would blend it, Tom, is if it were a volunteer, and then
Okay.
I'd have to really think about
Yeah.
that.
So if we train people for all kinds of things, why don't we just hire great candidates without a lifeguard certification and pay for them to take the lifeguard course?
So one of the things that Christy is doing is that very thing, which is why we're not going to be able to open the pool probably until the 23rd or 24th of June, which is unscheduled the way we used to do it. We were hoping to be able to do it earlier because school's getting out earlier this year. but she needs that extra time because she is taking people who don't have lifeguard certificates and putting them through training.
Great.
So anybody who's interested should manage, should apply through the university. If they are getting lost at the university, they should contact the town office, Mitch, me, Megan. We will, if we know we've got somebody who can swim, who would take the lifeguard course and become a lifeguard, we would be all over it. I'm also, my staff is telling me to remember that hotel pools would fall under this same, it's like when you go to a hotel, there isn't anybody on. And Mitch is telling me that Wyndham is planning to open their pool this way this year without lifeguards.
I'm more comfortable with that concept if it's a pretty limited number. So that has its ups and downs, but 75 kids in the pool with no lifeguard makes me very nervous. So there'd have to be a limit thing. Is this an opportunity where we can kind of really reach out to the community now before we vote on the budget to say, hey, community, like, this is hard. Like, we're trying to recruit, and we want to make it open for you, but like, what are your priorities? How would you feel? Like, I mean, I can post it on my Facebook page, but like, has the town, can we do that and get a little feedback?
So we can do whatever council wants. Ultimately, sometimes the best way to get feedback, quite honestly, is not to ask people what they want, but rather suggest that you might be looking to not do something. And then everybody who wants it comes out of the woodwork to tell you that they want it. I think one of the things with surveys that's important is to really understand what it is you're asking. Are you asking, do you want us to open the pool? Which I think that's the goal of many of the counselors here. The limitation, I don't think, is something that I can work within. In terms of either we're going to have staffing and I can open a pool reasonably similar to what it was like in the past, or we're not going to have staffing and we're going to have to make some changes. And I don't know, is your question, would you come to the pool if there wasn't a lifeguard on duty? I've heard some counselors really express concern about doing that. So I don't know. I think before we ask the community, I would think council would want to have a level of comfort. And I've heard a couple people, but not everybody. So I don't know where you guys are with that.
Well, I think we're trying to push things into spaces, given the conditions we're in. You've really clearly said what we're dealing with, but yet items come up about like, yeah, but the reality is still going to be, we don't have the resources to actually do that. So let's work within the parameters of what we have. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to get a swim lesson. Not everybody's going to be able to be there in the middle of the morning or whatever, prime times or whatever, simply because of what we're dealing with right now. I don't want to send our staff on a wild goose chase trying to find somebody to fit into a niche thing that lasts for like 3 months. We've got way too much, as we've been discussing on our budgets. We've been dealing with so many different things. And I understand that the pool is a passionate thing for people, but I think work within our parameters and go from there. So, yeah.
Do we have a sense of how the lifeguard recruiting is going?
So based on staff had meetings with university this morning. I met with staff late this afternoon. My understanding is that they had 5 people identified, 3 of whom had lifeguard certificates, 2 did not. And Mitch will tell me if I'm wrong about that, I'm sure.
Can we volunteer our teenage children to get a job?
your teenage children should feel encouraged to apply. Mine doesn't
Thank
swim,
you.
so.
Okay. I know Sam has one too. He can volunteer.
I mean, if I weren't working, I would come out of retirement, Sophie, but, but on a serious note, I mean, I'll also, I mean, Terry and I are connected to a community of people who are very athletic. We can try to recruit some folks as well. I really, in addition to, you know, the life safety issue that I feel it would be very difficult for me to get on board with, just having staff and not having lifeguards. The added layer of that is I don't want to put an Orono staff member in a position where they feel responsible for a job that they are not trained for. I don't think that that's appropriate to do that to a staff member, because I will tell you, as someone who did this job, they will feel, I mean, if someone is drowning, the town employee who is there to police the running on the deck, they are going to try to help that person, and they are not trained to do that. And I do not want to put our staff members in that position. In addition, I don't think that it's safe. And this isn't just about children. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. People can have medical emergencies. You could, while they're swimming. I mean, it's not just about kids. It's about the entire community of all ages. And I just don't feel comfortable with it, vehemently uncomfortable with it. And I don't think it's fair to do that to a town staff member. So I would much rather see a smaller, you know, a reduction in hours or availability with lifeguards, as opposed to trying to expand with just town staff and no lifeguards.
So, anything else on this?
So is this, what are we trying to accomplish around this conversation tonight and then next week? Like, I feel like I don't have enough information, which is understandable, to say yes or no to anything. And then by next week, we're supposed to do that, right?
So I would argue that the pool discussion is separate from next week. That for me, I am trying to pull together an operating plan. And depending upon if council came out tonight and said, oh, that is absolutely what you need to do, we don't need lifeguards, then I would move forward with an operating plan that promoted a pool that's open. But also I'm letting council know, Councilor Mitchell, that there is likely not going to be the resources available to meet the priorities that you all have asked me to deliver. I am asking for guidance on the priority, meaning the most people that can, for me, I would think our top priority would be, if we're going to open the pool, to have it available to the most number of people that can reasonably be there, to not limit what we do. So if I can be open 20 hours a week, to try to be open 20 hours a week at about $25,000 for the season. That's why this is here. And I think I understand that as a counselor, you would want to have every single bit of information available to you to make a firm, final, formal decision. But this is one of those things where I'm looking for just general guidance so that I can go try to put plans together, and be able to tell you what we can or can't do. And this is unfolding. If you told me today, if you can't have the pool open for 62 hours, we don't want it open a week, which is what we normally did, we don't want to open it, then I would go back to Campus Rec and say, unless you can staff it at the regular hours, we can't do this. If you were gung-ho on being able to be open without lifeguards, I would be able to put a different plan together. So I'm not asking you to necessarily make a operating decision about the pool. I'm asking you to give me some guidance on your priorities.
So the comments that I've heard tonight that I'm most clearly identified with were Megan's. I think she made a strong case for only opening the pool when we have it properly lifeguarded for safety purposes. I think when she said adults can have medical emergencies in the pool just as easily as kids have difficulty in the pool, I think that was a point that really hit home with me. So that's where I am. I would prefer to see it open limited hours than not open, but I would like to see it open with lifeguards.
I think we might be able to make an exception too for family swims. If we had a staff and there was and the family was there, I think he could probably, I think that might be an option as well. One of the things with the pool is parents dropping their kids off.
Yeah.
That would have to not be happening if we didn't have any lifeguards on at all. So, but yeah, I think with a family swim, I think you could get away with having a staff member there if there was other adults there.
So I'd be interested in finding out how that other town was managing it without having lifeguards. I recall last year, we didn't open the pool in part because we didn't want the lifeguards to be responsible for trying to keep people 6 feet apart from each other and protecting surfaces, cleaning surfaces because of COVID. And those are not our concerns this year, but it is an amazing asset resource of our town that people really appreciate about our town. It's one of the things that families are very excited about. And even those people who drop their kids off, you know, you would hear from them that it's an important resource. Yes, recreating can be dangerous. Certainly recreating in and around water can be dangerous. And if our insurance company says that we can have people do that without having a lifeguard, I guess I completely hear what Megan's saying. And I've been an outdoor leader, not a lifeguard, but leading outdoors trips. And there are plenty of stuff that can happen, and people that are trained to have first aid and to work with people who are recreating are so valuable and so important. However, we also have this resource for our community, and maybe it's too late to try to get community members to be involved. But I think that we've learned that since COVID times, there are a lot of people who are physically around. And if you encouraged, we have, and at least I'm not in it now, but I used to be in a group of master swimmers. And you know, Megan mentioned that she and Terry are connected with people who are athletes. We may actually have, by putting it out to the community, that what we would prefer would be to have volunteers that were physically there instead of town employees that aren't trained. We'd rather have volunteers who have experience with swimming and perhaps even, you know, would be there anyway with their kids. So anyway, so I hear what everyone's saying, but I think that this, as well as our waterfront areas, are such great resources, and I hate to see it closed up and locked when it could be open if our insurance company says that it could be open.
Tom, one thing I remember from sitting in, you know, as an audience member listening to this conversation last year is that I was afraid, and I think I've spoken to a couple of people about this, that if we close the pool for good reasons once, we would find a lot of other good reasons to keep it closed in the future. And I'm really afraid that we're taking that path. It is concerning. My preference would be to have a fully staffed pool with great lifeguards all the time, but I'm willing to allow parents to make the decisions on the well-being of their kids if we can staff it in some sort of hybrid model. And maybe I need to learn more about that, but that's kind of where I'm falling out now.
This is kind of Jeff, I get what you're saying. However, I think I'm kind of actually surprised that the pool has become such a focal point to where this is what people we've had COVID, we've had all these things, and we have like a lack of people to actually work these things, but yet we're trying to fit something in a space because we're afraid, I'm just using what was said, but afraid that we would take something away. I would think that as counselors, as I know each of you individually, you would never do that. You would never say like, okay, I've gotten this, even though I may not be the person who uses the pool, I am not the person who's going to be involved in it. I could never picture one person on our council that would actually go and try to even go less. So that's kind of concerning that citizens may feel that things get taken away, because if Orono's one thing, we don't typically take things away easily because we have a passionate community. So, but and I'll finish up here because I think we're going way too long with this, but I just think that to Meg's concern is, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right to protect our people. Personally, I don't feel comfortable either with saying free for all. I'm going to hold one person there to monitor, because I don't think it's appropriate, because something is going to happen. The law of averages says when you have those many days that somebody's there just to kind of clean up the deck, it's going to happen. So yeah, I just feel that whatever we have for staffing is what we work within those parameters. So thank you.
Sophie, I don't know where you're going to go with this. You certainly have a split vote here. I'd say you've got a 4-3 vote.
Yeah, I think one thing that people could do, I would just say, we have put it out on Facebook, we've put it out messages.
Is it on the board?
Belle, is it on the board?
Yep, there's a big old sign that says summer jobs, and it has a swimmer and it has campers, because we also need camp counselors as well.
Awesome.
So
And it's on the front page of our website.
One thing that you all can do, since you're all connected, which you are more than I am, if you could just help us put out the word. And I think what we'll do is tomorrow morning, either Mitch or Belle will put another desperate Facebook post out, and ask you guys if you would please pick it up and send it to your contacts.
So I think this is less about desperation, but just an explanation of, we're not going to be able to have the pool open to the same schedule as before unless, which isn't a desperate. I don't think that's desperate though. I think that's giving a heads up to our community to say, like, we would like to do this, but we can't unless we have the staff. And so like that, I've heard a lot of families talking about the pool's going to be open this summer, and with no kind of announcement from me that it was open. It's just an expectation. So if there's a potential for it to be less than it's been in the past, or that it might not be able to happen, then we need to give a heads up and explain, instead of like, oh, by the way, it's June 23rd and there's no pool because nobody applied. Like, I really feel strongly that we need to like connect the dots together for the community.
Well, also then if we're going to connect the dots together, then we could also put out a Facebook that says, you know, one possibility is to have the pool open with no lifeguards. And, you know, we're concerned about safety. Does anyone want to volunteer to be, you know, to be there? I guess. I don't know how to say it, because I'd like to hear, was it Wyndham? Whatever other town has figured out that this is something that they're comfortable with, could we hear from them?
Boy, I'd be uncomfortable putting that out without us being on board with no lifeguards. I know I'm not on board with it, and you know, maybe the majority would be, but I know I'm not. Has anybody contacted the school to see if they do any publicity for us with the graduating seniors?
I can do that, Tom. I'm not sure. They often pick up our stuff, I think. I just want to be really clear that volunteers are wonderful, but there there's a time and a place for them. And my fear is if I'm out here advertising for volunteers who know how to swim and then saying I'm staffing it without a trained lifeguard, and I don't know how that mix works. It is not a normal mix that we would use in general town operations. And I really feel like we're going around in circles instead of coming into a consensus where people could live. I feel like we have people very entrenched in their own viewpoint. And I think the only way to get you guys past this is for us to go another week and see what the reality is and map that out for you, what that will look like. I will tell you that if something bad happens and there is not a lifeguard there and something bad happens and people come to me, I am going to say this was a decision that the town council reached. And it's not about passing the buck. It's about the fact that it is a decision that you would reach. And I want you just to put yourself in that perspective. And as much as I told you I wouldn't give you my opinion, from an operating standpoint, this is not something that I would immediately reach to as the best way to do business. Just my 2 cents. And with that, I will continue on.
Okay,
Can you reach out to whoever you gave as an example of a town that was not going to have staff pool and so we can hear from them?
Lori, would you like me to issue them an invitation so that they can join you at your next meeting, or do you
Oh,
just want my?
Sure, that'd be great.
I think just how are they managing it would be fine. Personally, I don't think we need to have them.
Sophie, I can find out for you if you want. I'll volunteer to do that.
I think Mitch can make a phone call. I think Mitch has probably already spoken to them. That's how he would know what they were doing.
Okay.
But hey, if people need more information, I can do that. The last item that I have on my manager's report is around assessing. I have great news, exciting news.
We need it.
Yes, we do. Poor Mitch is doing double time as the Parks and Rec director, transitioning into the community development director, who's also doing double time as the assessor right now, or assessor's agent. We have been operating since the end of December, beginning of January, without an assessor. We have a per diem, so when we really need a formal action, we have somebody we can reach out to. But it is, we have kind of been without, and that is a position that we can't be without. So we interviewed a few people for the position, most recently on Friday. But also earlier last week, I met with Down East Assessing Services out of Lemoyne, and I plan to hire them. I think they are awesome. They have a track record. They have all the certification. They use both of the software platforms that we're working in, so they should be a great help. The principal is Mark Perry, who is a certified master assessor, used to work for the
No
town of Bar
relation.
Harbor. Yeah, no relation. Used to work for Bar Harbor, went out on his own, doing assessing in small towns and real estate work. Is ready to try to expand a little bit. He works also with the assessor from Bar Harbor. We met with them both, very knowledgeable. I couldn't stump them, and I tried. I think they've got a nice demeanor that will work well with the community. But because it's a contract, the contract would be 13 months starting June 1st and would end June 30 of 2022. I would very much like to sign the contract and have you guys affirm it at our June 14th meeting so that we can get them on and going. Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
We have an assessor. I can sleep, which is awesome. So that's my good news.
Great. Nice to end on good words.
Yep.
Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the group tonight, we do not meet again until next Thursday, which is June 3rd. So people get a long weekend with no meeting. And Monday's a holiday, so no meeting. And we will be back together for a very busy evening on June 3rd. And you're going to have some material for us delivered before that time. Right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.